Listen. Just listen for a second. Do you hear that? That heavy, suffocating silence. 2 years ago, this factory floor in Stuttgart was deafening. It was the sound of power, the sound of pride. Now it is a tomb. Hans, a master engineer, stood right here for 30 years. Today, he didn't just turn off a machine. He turned off his life's purpose. The steel didn't run out. The customers didn't leave. The lights went out because a $500 billion lie finally collapsed. This is what the suicide of a superpower sounds like. Take a good look at this man. This is Hans, 55 years old. See those hands? That grease deeply embedded in the lifelines of his palms. You cannot wash that away with soap. That is the permanent ink of dignity. For 35 years, Hans walked through these iron gates every single morning at 6 o'clock, sharp rain or shine. He is not some nameless number on a spreadsheet. He is a master craftsman. The precision engines he built with these very hands are currently powering ambulances in Chicago and delivery trucks in Texas. He did everything right. He played by the rules. He paid his high taxes without complaining. He believed in the sacred contract that if you work hard, you will be safe. But today that contract was torn up. Look at his eyes. That is not anger you see. It is total confusion. He is holding a pink slip that says his life's work is over. Why? Did he forget how to build? No. Did the world stop buying cars? No. The factory is closing simply because the electricity to turn on the lights now costs more than the profit from the products. He is being sacrificed on the cold altar of a political experiment. Tonight he has to walk home, look his wife in the eye, and tell her that the country he helped build has decided it literally cannot afford him anymore. This isn't just a layoff. It is a betrayal. So what exactly killed the factory? It was not a missile, it was a word. Energiewende. The energy turnaround. It sounds like a beautiful utopian dream, doesn't it? A world of pure green power where flowers bloom next to solar panels. But dreams are expensive. And this specific dream cost $500 billion. Let me put that insane number in perspective for you. That is $500 billion of cold, hard taxpayer money. With that kind of cash, you could literally rebuild the entire United States interstate highway system from scratch. But Germany didn't build roads. They took that mountain of gold and placed it all on one single reckless bet. Imagine you live in a cabin in Alaska in the dead of winter. You have a perfectly good, reliable furnace keeping your family warm. But you decide to smash that furnace with a sledgehammer simply because you ordered some solar panels that haven't arrived yet. You stand there shivering in the dark, telling your freezing children not to worry because the sun will surely come out tomorrow. That is not a strategy. That is delusion. They call it a green transition. I call it the most expensive suicide note in economic history. They bet the farm. They bet the factory. They bet Hans' future. And as we all know, in the casino of geopolitics, the house always wins. To understand this madness, we have to rewind the clock. March 11, 2011. The world watched in absolute horror as the ocean rose up and swallowed the coast of Japan. Fukushima. It was a tragedy of biblical proportions, and our hearts broke for the Japanese people. But emotions are terrible drivers of policy. Here is the cold, hard truth. Germany is 5,000 miles away from Japan. It sits on solid European bedrock, not a seismic fault line. The chances of a massive Pacific tsunami hitting a power plant in the middle of Bavaria are exactly zero. Logic dictates that you review your safety protocols. You check your backup generators. You stay calm. But fear is a powerful drug. And the German public was overdosing on it. They looked at their own nuclear plants, which had provided safe, clean, cheap power for decades, and suddenly they saw monsters. The Green Party screamed that the apocalypse was coming. The streets were filled with terrified voters. And the pressure cooker began to scream. This is where the story gets truly twisted. Chancellor Angela Merkel was not just a politician. She is a scientist. She holds a PhD in quantum chemistry. She understands the physics of an atom better than 99% of the human population. She knew the data. She knew her reactors were totally safe. But she looked at the polls. She looked at the angry mob outside her window. And she blinked. In a moment of pure political panic, the scientists surrendered to the populist. She announced the immediate shutdown of the country's nuclear backbone. 8 reactors switched off. Just like that. Snap. Gone. It was not a calculated transition. It was a knee-jerk reaction to a disaster happening on the other side of the planet. Imagine seeing a car crash on the news in Tokyo and immediately walking out to your driveway in New Jersey and setting your own car on fire just to be safe. That is the level of hysteria we are talking about. That decision was the original sin. That was the moment logic died, and the slow-motion economic collapse began. So now the nuclear plants are dead. The cooling towers are cold. But here is the problem with reality. Physics does not care about your feelings. The wind does not always blow in November. The sun does not shine at night. But the factories in Bavaria still need to run 24 hours a day. You have cut off your legs, but you still need to run a marathon. So what do? You look for a crutch. And you find the most dangerous crutch in the world. Enter the dealer. Vladimir Putin. For decades, Germany operated under a naive philosophy called change through trade. The idea was incredibly seductive. They believed that if they bought enough natural gas from Russia, they could civilize the bear. They thought that if the economies were entangled enough, Russia would never start a war because it would be bad for business. It was a beautiful liberal fantasy. But Putin was not a business partner. He was a predator. And he saw Germany not as a customer, but as a junkie. He offered them the drug. Cheap Siberian natural gas. Billions of cubic meters of it pumped directly into the veins of German industry through the Nordstream pipelines. It was addictive. It was cheap. It made the balance sheets at Volkswagen and BASF look spectacular. Germany became the industrial powerhouse of Europe largely because they were mainlining this cheap Russian energy. They were high on profits, and they ignored every single warning sign. And oh, there were warnings. The Polish screamed it. The Ukrainians begged them to stop. They said you are handing the Kremlin a kill switch for your economy. But the most famous warning came from right here in America. Let's go back to 2018. The United Nations General Assembly. President Donald Trump stands at the podium and says very clearly that Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Now watch the reaction. Look at the German delegation. Look at their faces. They are smirking. They are laughing. They are nudging each other and rolling their eyes like sophisticated high school bullies mocking a substitute teacher. They thought they were the smartest people in the room. They thought they understood high-level diplomacy better than anyone else. That laughter is the defining image of German hubris. Because 4 years later the tanks rolled into Ukraine, and the laughter stopped dead silence. Suddenly the dealer cut the supply. The cheap gas that fueled the entire German economic miracle vanished overnight. The withdrawal symptoms were immediate and catastrophic. The price of electricity didn't just go up. It went vertical. It increased by 1,000% at the peak. Imagine filling up your gas tank, and instead of $50, it costs you $500. That is what happened to every factory owner in Germany. The business model was broken. The strategic genius turned out to be suicidal negligence. They trusted a crocodile not to bite, and now they are bleeding out in the water while the rest of the world watches in disbelief. There is a fancy word economists use for what is happening right now. Deindustrialization. It sounds boring, doesn't it? Like a dusty chapter in a college textbook. But let me tell you what it actually feels like. It feels like a heart attack. Germany is not like America. America has Google, Facebook, and Wall Street. We export software and movies. But Germany makes things, real tangible things, steel, chemicals, cars. If you take away the factories, Germany is just a really nice museum with good beer. And right now, the exhibits in that museum are packing their bags and leaving. Look at BASF. They are the largest chemical producer in the world. Their main plant in Ludwigshafen consumes as much energy as the entire country of Switzerland. For 100 years, this was the beating heart of German industry. But last year, the heart skipped a beat. BASF announced they are permanently downsizing in Europe. They are cutting thousands of jobs. And where is that money going? Are they building wind farms in Bavaria? No. They are building a $10 billion state-of-the-art complex in China. Think about the absolute insanity of this. The German government strangled their own companies with green regulations and high energy costs to save the planet. So what did the companies do? They moved to China where energy is cheap, and the government does not care if you burn coal to keep the lights on. So here is the punchline that nobody is laughing at. By forcing these factories to move to China, global emissions actually go up. You didn't save the climate. You just exported your pollution to a country with lower standards. And in the process, you destroyed your own middle class. It is not just chemicals. Look at Miele, the company that makes those invincible washing machines. They are moving production to Poland. Look at Volkswagen. They are openly discussing building their next battery factories in Canada, and the United States chasing the subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act. This is the great betrayal. The German worker, like our friend Hans, was told to sacrifice. He paid the surcharges. He suffered the inflation. He was told it was for the greater good. But now he watches as the machines he maintained are crated up and shipped to Shanghai. He realizes he wasn't sacrificing for the future. He was sacrificing so his boss could move to a cheaper jurisdiction. Economists call this structural change. I call it hollowing out a nation from the inside. When the steel mills close, they do not come back. When the supply chains break, they are gone forever. Germany is literally setting its own house on fire just to show the neighbors how serious they are about fire safety. And while the house burns, the neighbors are not impressed. They are just raiding the fridge. The era of made in Germany is dying. And it wasn't murdered by a competitor. It was murdered by its own government. But if you think the pain stops at the factory gate, you are wrong. Because once the government ran out of industry to destroy, they turned their eyes to the only thing left. Your home. If you thought losing your job was bad, wait until the government kicks down your front door and raids your basement. By 2023, the German government realized that shutting down nuclear and burning coal was a disaster for their carbon footprint. They needed a win. They needed to show the world they were still green crusaders. So they decided to come for the only thing you have left, your home. Enter the heat hammer. The Green Party economic minister Robert Habeck pushed through a law that effectively banned new oil and gas boilers. The replacement was something called a heat pump. Now, do not get me wrong. Heat pumps are amazing technology. They are basically Teslas for your heating system. Super efficient, futuristic. But there is a catch, a very expensive catch. They only work well in modern, well-insulated houses with underfloor heating. Do you know what most German houses are? They are not modern glass boxes. They are old, drafty brick fortresses built in the 1950s. To make a heat pump work in a house like that, you do not just plug it in. You have to rip up the floors. You have to replace the radiators. You have to insulate the walls. Meet Helga. She is 80 years old. She lives on a fixed pension in the house her husband built with his bare hands. She has maybe 500 euros left over at the end of the month for food. Suddenly, the government tells her she needs to spend 50,000 euros to retrofit her home. 50,000. That is not a renovation. That is a bankruptcy filing. That is an eviction notice disguised as environmental policy. The message to grandma was clear. Take out a loan you can never repay or freeze. The public reaction was not just anger. It was fury. The tabloid newspapers called it the Heithammer, the heat hammer. It felt like an expropriation of private property. People panicked. It was a run on the bank, but instead of cash, people were running to buy gas boilers. In a supreme twist of irony, heat pump sales actually crashed because everyone was so terrified of the mandate that they rushed to install brand new fossil fuel boilers before the ban kicked in. They locked in gas usage for another 20 years just to escape the government's grip. The political fallout was nuclear. The Green Party crashed in the polls, and who rose up? The far right. The AfD party surged to record highs simply by promising one thing. We will not touch your boiler. Think about that. A government so blinded by ideology that they almost radicalized their own grandmothers. They turned home heating into a culture war. And in the end, they didn't even get the green transition they wanted. They just created a nation of anxious citizens who now look at their thermostat with fear instead of comfort. This is what happens when you govern by wishful thinking instead of economic reality. So we come to the final insult. After firing Hans and raiding Helga's savings, surely they achieved something right. Surely the air is pristine and the polar bears are safe. Wrong. This is the dirty secret that they do not want you to see on the nightly news. Because the nuclear plants are dead and the wind is unreliable, Germany has returned to the dark ages. They are currently burning lignite, brown coal. It is the dirtiest, nastiest, and most toxic fossil fuel on the face of the earth. It is basically mud that burns. To get it, they are using machines the size of skyscrapers to rip open the earth, swallowing entire villages whole. Here is the irony that is so thick you can choke on it. Last year, Germany actually dismantled a wind farm to expand a coal mine. You cannot make this stuff up. They tore down the symbols of the future to dig up the ghosts of the past. Just look across the border at France. The French kept their nuclear plants. Their electricity grid is clean, stable, and cheap. Their carbon footprint is tiny. Meanwhile, the self-proclaimed green leader of Europe is pumping tons of black soot into the atmosphere just to keep the lights on. So picture this. A wealthy hipster in Berlin buys a brand new electric vehicle to save the planet. He feels virtuous. He drives home and plugs it into the wall. But where is that electricity coming from? It is not coming from the sun. It is coming from burning brown sludge in a pit. He is driving a coal-powered car. Germany destroyed its economy to be the good guy and ended up being the biggest polluter in the region. They didn't save the world. They just painted their suicide note green. Let us go back to Hans one last time. He is walking out of the factory gates right now. Head down. Shoulders heavy. The sun is setting over Stuttgart, and for him it is setting forever. He did his duty, but his leaders failed him. Germany wanted to be a role model for the world. And to be fair, they succeeded. They became the perfect model of exactly what not to do. They showed us that you cannot build a modern civilization on wishful thinking and guilt. They proved that if you ignore the laws of physics, the laws of economics will punish you without mercy. So look at America. Look at your own electricity bill this month. Is it creeping up? Are we walking down the same dark path? Germany spent $500 billion to learn this painful lesson, so we don't have to. I want to hear from you. Is it time to bring back nuclear power, or are we too afraid? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to protect your future from the same politicians who destroyed Hans' life, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Do not let them turn off your lights. Class dismissed.